Hey guys and gals, Effie here. Today we are going to talk about me getting scammed by trying to commission a book cover art set from an independent artist. So this video might take a little while. Go ahead and pour yourself a cup of tea or coffee or wine or whatever you're into, because it might be a little long. So this whole thing started on March 30th after I posted that I was looking for some pricing or estimates for some character art that I was looking to do. I'd like the characters from my Mortarbox series to be artistically rendered, and I just don't have the skill to do that. I can draw kind of animals, but I can only do the outlines. I can't do color, I can't do shading. It's just not where my skill set lies. So I was looking to see if I could find somebody else to do them, knowing that I had a full set of 3 books already planned and also potentially wanted some work done for Trophy Braid, which is the first book that I'm going to publish. So this guy, Steven Art 2, reaches out to me and he's like, hey, are you looking for an artist? Would you consider me? Can you look at my portfolio? So I reviewed his portfolio, which had this really wide variety of styles and skill levels, and I kind of thought it was a little weird, but I also know that I am not well versed in art. I don't know what kinds of variety of style and skill a person can demonstrate, and so I just assumed that the disparate images that I was looking at was my lack of knowledge, not his fraudulent behavior. And I wish I'd trusted my gut and just passed on by, but I didn't. So I find a few images that I like and I show him like, hey, this looks like it's a lot more complicated. This looks like it's a lot easier. What's going to be kind of the price range for a character portrait in each of these styles? And he quoted me, some reasonable prices. They were a little on the high end for the going rate for people who are just getting established, but it seemed within the price range that I was expecting. So no surprises there. I told him that it was a little more expensive than I was looking for, and that I wasn't looking to pursue it for another few months, and that when I was ready, I would reach out to him and everybody else that I'd contacted, and let them know like, hey, you got the job or you didn't. And he says, okay, and he goes on his merry way. Then he DMs me the next day asking if there's any update. I was pretty clear that it was going to be a few months, but, I thought maybe there's a language barrier. It's clear that English is not the guy's first language, which is fine. I don't mind it. And I thought maybe it was my communication style and he just didn't get maybe the nuance or the phrasing that I was using. So I chalked it up to my poor communication, not his lack of understanding or paying attention. So that was the second red flag that I ignored. So because I thought, the reason his portfolio looks the way that it does is because I just don't understand art, and the reason that he's feeling so pushy about the timeline is because I failed to communicate correctly, I assume this is all on me because I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt until they've given me a reason not to. So I go ahead and I ask him like, hey, have you done any cover art for books? And he goes, oh yeah, of course I have. Here's an example of that. And he gives me this beautiful cover for The Life of Pi. Now I did do, I've got alarm bells ticking in my head now, and I'm like, maybe this isn't a good idea. I should check. So I did a reverse image search on the cover that he sent me, and I couldn't find it on the internet. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe it is legit. Surely a reverse image search would find the picture, and if the guy wasn't legit, I could find the real artist and I would know that I was being scammed or know that he was trying to scam me, but it never came up. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm just being, grumpy. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the one that's being jaded or being pessimistic. So trying to do the right thing, I go ahead and talk to him about commissioning the cover art for Trophy Braid. I asked him about the cost, and he said front, back, and spine would cost $150, which is really low. Originally, he quoted it at $100, and I told him, I'm like, that seems really low. That's a lot of work. Are you sure? And he goes, if you want the back and spine, the whole thing will be $150. And I'm like, it's still really low. But I also knew he knows I've got a several $1,000 job waiting for someone someday. So I thought he was giving me a really good price because he wanted the bigger job later. So on April 4th, 5 days after we started our communication, I went ahead and commissioned him to do cover art, and I gave him the specifications including a basic layout that centered the character in the lower third of the book, and that all of the darkness needs to be around the edge. And that's really important for marketing, the positioning of the characters and the way that the scene pulls into the center. That's really important for marketing. So it was really important to me that the cover be laid out in that shape. Other specifications included that it needed to be in a dark forest, that there needed to be a Native American woman viewed from the back, her hair needed to be braided with trinkets hanging from it, and she needed to be in the snow holding a bloody knife. So Stephen asks me to send this $150 US via PayPal, friends, and family, and I thought that was really weird given that it's a business transaction. Now, I know that I'm going to have to account for that $150 when I pay my taxes here in America, and that I can't send it via friends and family because it's a business transaction. So I send it the way I need to for my tax documents. And he gets upset because he gets charged a fee. Friends and family charges a lower fee, and he wanted the lower fee because he wanted more money. So I make up the difference, which is like $8 or $9, no big deal, whatever, it's fine. He says it's going to take 7 to 10 days to complete the work, which is a perfectly reasonable turnaround time for a guy who's trying to do it professionally. And I say, okay, and we both part ways. Then on April 15th, 10 days later, I still hadn't heard from him. So I reach out and he says, oh, I'm finishing up some shading. I'll get it to you in 3 days. And I'm like, okay, maybe it took a little longer than he expected. You know, he's probably still working full time or going to school or something. So I just assume that everything's fine. Even though in the back of my mind, I've still had all these bells kind of going, hey, something's wrong. Hey, something's wrong. I ignore them and I say, okay, let me see it in 3 days. So 2 days later, a day before he's meant to provide me this shaded art, he comes back around and asks me about all those character portraits that he quoted at $1,700. Now, I'd been really clear that that wasn't going to be starting for another few months and that I was nowhere near ready, and that it was going to be piecemealed one piece at a time. So by this point, I realize, okay, I've probably been scammed. What am I going to do? This guy has my money, and it's only $150, but it's my $150, and that's $150 that I can't pay a real cover artist to make me a real cover. So I put him off. I told him I want to review the cover art first and, see what he's done so far for the work that I've already paid for. And immediately he responds with, oh, don't worry, you can trust my work. You've reviewed my portfolio. Which, of course, is a scam line. On Monday, he still hadn't sent me the cover art, and I was about to go out of town to take the kids to Myrtle Beach. So I tell him, like, hey, I'm going to be out of town for a few days. Go ahead and take your time. I'll just look at it when I get back. He was very cordial, very polite, all very conversational. And I'm starting to doubt myself, thinking, like, why am I being so hard on this guy? He's not done anything wrong. He's been communicative with me. He's not ignoring me. He's always been polite, a little pushy, but polite. So I'm thinking, again, doubting myself, like, oh, maybe I'm just being pessimistic. Maybe I'm being ungenerous. I need to chill out. So on the 26th of April, a full 3 weeks after I'd commissioned this 7 to 10 day job, I get back from Myrtle Beach and I still don't have the art. So I reach out to him, and he's very polite, asks me how my trip was, and then he sends me the cover art. And I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. This is not a hand-drawn cover. It doesn't include the front, the back, the spine. It's not a Native American woman, and there's a lot of other weird inclusions, not even to mention the quality. So I tell Stephen I'm not satisfied, and he says he'll fix it. And I give him a list of all the things that I'm dissatisfied with in the image, primarily being it's not what I asked for. In the very roughest sense, it kind of meets some points of the brief, but it's not the image we discussed. It's not the quality we discussed. It's not a hand-drawn image. And I may have gone off a little bit. I was starting to get frustrated. It's like, okay, dude, like it's been 3 weeks now. You said it would take a week to 10 days. And I know at this point, like, okay, I've been scammed. This guy's not an artist. Like, what the hell has happened? How do I get my money back? But he assures me that he can do the work. I ask him, I'm like, hey, if you can't do this, that's okay. Just say so. Give me my money back and I'll get somebody else to do it. No hard feelings. No upset, no hard feelings, no problem. And he's like, no, I can do it. Just tell me what's wrong. So I give him the specifications again. I tell him where he's not met the specifications. I outline some things on the image because he didn't understand the words that I was using. Again, we're dealing with the language barrier here. So he says, okay, I'll fix it. No problem. You have as many revisions as you need in order to get the image that you want. And I'm like, I can't really fault that. Okay. So May 15th rolls around, and I still haven't heard back from him. So I reach out, and he says he's working on it, and he'll be back to me soon. May 20th rolls around. Still no word from Steven. So I ask him for an ETA, and he doesn't respond. On June 5th, another 2 weeks later, I feel like I've done everything that I need to do. He's had plenty of time to answer me. And I contact PayPal and say, look, this guy scammed me. He said he'd provide this kind of work and he hasn't. Can I get my money back? And I started the chargeback process with PayPal. And then I DM'd Steven and let him know that I'd done it. So lo and behold, the man finally answers me and he asks for one more day and says he'll send me progress at the end of tomorrow. 3 days later, still no update. So I tell him, you have until June 28th, and then if you haven't done it by then, I'm going to ask PayPal to give me my money back, which I'd already started the process, but he, as the vendor, gets to review it for that period of time. June 28th is the deadline that PayPal gave me, so it's the deadline I gave Steven. So then he sends me this rough sketch, which is basically what he sent before, just put onto a drawing program and then outlined. And it's terrible, right? So I ask him again, are you even capable of doing this kind of work? So he asks me to cancel the request. I refuse because I know he's just trying to delay something because he doesn't actually have the work or the skill to create the work. On June 13th, he sends me a progress update, which is 2 photographs superimposed over one another, which is not at all what I asked for. And I tell him, this is not it. This is not what we discussed. It doesn't meet the brief. It's not the right images. And oh, by the way, I don't want photographs. I want hand-drawn cover art, which is what I commissioned. On June 17th, he finally comes back with a hand-rendered image that roughly meets the brief. It's not centered, which, as we discussed before, is absolutely crucial for marketing, but in the vaguest sense, it meets the requirements, right? It satisfies the brief. So even though I don't like it, he has done what he said he would do for the front cover. There's still no spine, and there's still no back. And I can't use it as a book cover because it's incomplete. June 18th, we go out of town again, and I didn't mention it to Steven because, let's be honest, this work was supposed to be done in mid-April, and then I get back on June 20th. And I let him know she's not centered and she needs to be centered, and oh, by the way, you're missing the spine and back. So Steven says, hey, I need 3 days to make the changes, and off he goes. So June 23rd, he comes back with this big black bar attached to the side of the painting. And I'm like, that's not gonna work. So the next morning when I see it, I'm like, hey, that's not what we agreed to. You're supposed to do a fully rendered cover. So the next day he comes back and the man has the audacity to tell me that the entirety of the cover, the spine and the back, is not included in the original price. And that if I want him to do that, I'm gonna have to pay him more. So I slapped him with a screenshot of our original discussion where he agrees that it is the front, the spine, and the back, and then tell him that I don't want to talk to him anymore and cut off communication. After that, it was just a matter of sitting around and waiting for PayPal to give me my money back, which they did on July 4th. Happy Independence Day. So, the moral of this story is, trust your damn gut, and if it feels like a scam, it probably is. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and of course if you like the way that I present information, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell down below. You can find all of my social media contacts in the description, and of course if you want to keep up with me and the progress I'm making on my current novel, you can do that at effywritesbooks.com. Thank you so much for watching, have an excellent day, and I'll see you next time.